Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Billy Watson TV. I have a returning guest on the show, but you probably don't recognise him because the last time he was on was 10 years ago, 2012. So it's been
Wow.
time moves fast. So his name's Joe Hoare. He wrote a book before, which we'll get into, but let him introduce himself a wee bit and give you some background knowledge of what you do, Joe. So would you like to do that for the audience?
Well, yes. Well, first of all, I had. It felt like about 3 or 4 years ago that we last chatted, Billy. I had no idea it was a full decade.
Yeah, I think it's that long, yeah.
Yeah, well, amazing. Well, so I'm a laughter yoga practitioner, and we can sort of chat a bit about laughter yoga. But it's basically, it's a way of being well and energized and hopefully sort of relaxed and a bit chilled, and it's great. And I've been using this as a sort of as an approach to sort of being well for about 20 years. What else shall I say, Billy?
Well, first of all, how did you discover it then? What made you? Did you create this? Is this your thing, laughter yoga, or is it a whole?
No. Okay, so I became interested in well-being practices back in the sort of mid 1980s, after I had a bout of insomnia, right? If you haven't had insomnia, and if people haven't had insomnia, the best thing to do is don't. It's awful. It's just my bout lasted off and on about 18 months. And one of the things it showed me, you see, was I was reasonably well educated and reasonably well qualified and competent in my job and sort of respected by my professional peers, but I had zero personal well-being skills. Absolutely none. And so I had no idea how to cope with sort of stress and worry and anxiety. And basically, it all got on top of me. So when I finally emerged from my insomnia tunnel, I said to myself, well, there simply has to be a better way of living than this.
So you didn't do anything to stop the insomnia tunnel; it just kind of happened naturally.
Well, I discovered, one little thing that I discovered, but it's not a little thing, it was an enormous thing, was I found if in the middle of the night I was sort of awake and really tense and didn't, I found that simply doing things like really sort of squeezing my shoulders for 5 minutes or so, it was profoundly relaxing. And so that made a big difference. It's also really helpful for me to discover I had this kind of this fear that if I didn't sleep enough, then I wouldn't be able to function and do my job. And it was a close run thing, mate. It was a close run thing. But I did manage it. So I managed to sort of to knock that I just sort of dissolved that fear. And also, as we were sort of chatting sort of just now, I think in a way, as that kind of that fear and that anxiety disappeared, and I discovered one or two very sort of practical sort of self-help techniques, then so my body's and my being's natural ability to self-heal and just come back into some kind of healthier equilibrium, that just gradually happened.
Yeah. So what was causing the insomnia? Just because you couldn't deal with the stress and you're lying awake and worrying and stuff like that. And then the more you think about not sleeping, the more the worse it gets. And
exactly, it was almost exactly that. I was kind of thinking to myself, "Oh, the one thing I don't want is to get insomnia."
Right.
And when you really feel
something,
yes, boy, it happens. But however, I look at it now and I say, so thank you, because it propelled me into the field of well-being. And one of the things I've come to appreciate, and it's what I teach in all the sessions I run, is the importance of self-care. In fact, the paramount importance of self-care. In fact, our own personal self-care and well-being and being well probably is about the most important thing in our life. Because if we fall to pieces, everything else falls to pieces. And we simply don't. We function better when we are well. We communicate better. All our relationships are better, and and I only came to appreciate this after being really not well.
That's the thing, isn't it? You're going along all right, take it for granted, and then when you're ill, you're like, oh fuck, I really wish I was ill better, you know. I really appreciate my health, you know.
Yes,
and then
yes.
you take it for granted again.
Well, well. It's really. I find it's really smart, a really good practice, just to keep sort of topping it up and refreshing sort of self-care actually all the time.
Yeah.
And that sort of physical self-care and emotional and sort of and mental and psychological and sort of spiritual and environmental. No, really, making it a priority. And one of the other things that I became a real sort of lodestone in my life was I simply don't care where the practice comes from, no, whether it's brand new or sort of thousands of years old. The only thing that interests me is, does it work?
Yeah.
And does it work for me? And so
what did you start doing back in the day then, as you started coming out the insomnia? What different practices did you get into before this laughter one you discovered?
Laughter was some way down the line. The first thing I came across was this weird thing called breathing. Because I went to my sort of first ever sort of health and well-being or sort of mind, body, spirit show many years ago, and I had some kind of reading or other, and the person said this, that, and the other, and learn to breathe. And at the time, I thought, what? Hello, and then a few months after that, I came across diaphragmatic breathing, and I thought, aha, that's what they meant. And so as we know, so diaphragmatic breathing is when as you breathe in, your belly goes out, and as you exhale, your belly comes in. It's a diaphragm. It's a diaphragmatic muscle. As we breathe in, it goes down, and when I discovered that, right, that's what they meant. And of course, it's I'm sure. Well, you'll be incredibly familiar with all this, but it's such a huge, instant relaxation tool.
Would you like to explain to people how that works? Why does it work?
Yes. Well, okay. So it works because the thing that controls our breathing is our diaphragm, and that's a muscle here. And the amount of how deeply we breathe, how much space is available in our lungs for our breathing, depends on how much space we allow our lungs by moving our diaphragm. Because
we tend to think you breathe in, it's like you go up like that, and it fully lifts the diaphragm.
In fact, you see, that's how we adults tend to breathe. As children, we all breathe diaphragmatically, which means as we breathe in, our belly goes out. And learning to breathe diaphragmatically means, just getting used to pushing your belly out, your tummy out, as you breathe in. And when you push your tummy out like that, what's happening is your diaphragm is moving down. Right? That's what's pushing the belly out. And as it moves down to push the belly out, it gives our lungs much more space. So we can breathe much more deeply. We can relax our breathing. We have fewer breaths per moment, and it's a natural relaxation breath, and it's also a very practical sort of breathing technique that singers use, for example. It's the fundamental. Oh, the other people who tend to learn this are the other half of the population, called women, because so many women are mothers, right? Of course, one of the basic sort of antenatal practices is breathing for relaxation. And when I found that, I thought, wow, it took me about sort of 6 months to learn how to do it, because it feels really weird. It feels really weird, doesn't it? And so just forcing myself to move and kind of in a slightly exaggerated way.
So do you just do that as a practice, or do you try and breathe like that normally?
Oh, I know. Well, I think I probably breathe like that normally now.
Right.
I find whenever I notice my breathing, I'm breathing diaphragmatically.
So that helps to keep you grounded and stuff. Then, I guess if you're like that, you're kind of more nervous. If you've got shallow breaths, you're not really in yourself.
Yeah, I know, and it starts to work just like that. And another way to do it for people who want to practice is to lie down, lie on your back and breathe, and you automatically breathe diaphragmatically, which means it's a fantastic technique to start using in bed. If you struggle to go to sleep, or if you wake up in the night, just lie on your back and breathe deeply, because you will be breathing diaphragmatically anyway. And just by focusing on slowing it down, then you amplify the relaxation effect that is a natural a consequence, a result of diaphragmatic breathing. So I became a breathing fan, Billy. You probably hadn't guessed that. And another technique I came across is a thing called, it's from a book on shamanic healing by someone called Peter Aziz, is the 1 minute breath. And what you do is you take 30 seconds for an in breath and 30 seconds for an out breath. And you do that sort of 3 minutes or 5 minutes. Now, again, it takes a little bit of practice, and it takes a little bit of doing, but it slows everything down. And of course, as it slows down, it's incredibly relaxing, and also actually very sort of focusing. So all these kinds of things I find absolutely and so simple. We can be doing these kinds of things, sitting on the bus, when we're in the car, or when we're out for a walk, or sort of sitting in the sun, or what. It's such a discreet thing. It's not like having to do all sort of physical exercise, and everybody's thinking, what all. We can just quietly get on with all these things without anybody really noticing. And that's the kind of practice, you see, that I really love. I've ranted a bit.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, actually, I've met Peter as I've took a few of his workshops, and I've done one called Body Electronics, if you know anything about that. It's got points in the body. You push these points and it releases.
Yes. And you hold them for a long, and you push hard. And yes. I haven't done that, but I know people who have. Really profound stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it goes through different layers of the body. First of all, it's like the unconscious, and then gradually remove anger. So it does over a 2-week period, and then the last one, it's got this point in here. They push.
I know.
Triple axis, and it's really mental. Just because by this time you're removing deep, layers of emotional things you've suppressed, and I couldn't even put a word to it. It's just like then you realise after you've done it how much shit everyone's carrying around with us.
Yes.
So much layers of bullshit that people have and have to get removed. The whole human race, you realise, needs proper healing on itself. It's like
it needs a detox.
That's exactly that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's why you see, I love all these sorts of practice because the one thing we can do is take full responsibility for our own health and well-being. That's one thing we can do, and for our own mood, and for our own happiness, for our own sort of sense of joy and connection. That's the one thing we actually have full control over.
Well, this is the only way to me the world's going to change, when people do take responsibility for that and stop blaming other people or an imaginary virus, as I was saying. When you do take responsibility for your health, you can't blame others, and then everyone has to step up. But we should all be encouraging each other on this journey, And
yes, exactly. I saw someone. I was on a thing called I subscribed to a series of a thing called the Shift Network, and they had the first talk. This was, but I think it's still up there on the sort of web at the moment, and they had. The opening session was with 4 sort of bodywork teachers, all of whom had about 50 years experience. And I thought, well, that's pretty good to start with. And one of the guys there, so was in his 80s. He has Parkinson's. Okay. So his body is a bit kind of, all the things that the Parkinson's is. And he told a story about, he was sent, he lives in the States, and sent some sort of questionnaire. And they said, no, so what symptoms do you suffer from? And he simply tore that questionnaire up, because he said, I don't suffer from any symptoms. I experience certain symptoms, but I don't suffer from any of them. And he is still an active bodywork teacher. He just happens to be a bodywork teacher and movement teacher who is experiencing Parkinson's. And I thought, well, good on you, mate. That's exactly it.